Yes, boys, today's video, 5 mistakes I wish I knew earlier when it comes to the gym, training, diet, nutrition, everything. I'm literally speaking to my younger self here and just telling him what I wish I knew when I first started. And if you follow all of these tips and you just literally learn from my mistakes, I guarantee you will get ahead. You just have to make sure you leave the ego at the door and kind of understand the rationale of why I'm saying these things, because these are very hyper specific to the mistakes I made. So eventually you don't have to, because a lot of people say a lot of things on the internet, but no one talks about the mistakes that the majority of people make, and that's exactly what I'm about to do. So I'm going to get straight into this and talk to you about the top 5 mistakes that I did make. Now I'll move this little fucker out of the way. There we go. So number 1 is failing to prepare is preparing to fail. I'm sure you've heard that old one. And what I kind of wish someone told me when I first started, and this is when I made the majority of my results, was if you want the results in the gym, go the whole way. Now, what I often find is people do all the hard stuff, which is committing to the gym, going 5 days per week, but then they shoot themselves in the foot by not doing all of the extra stuff that is going to ensure that their hard work is not going to waste and that they are actually getting the growth that they deserve. So, when I say go the whole way, I mean do everything by the book. Because if you're going to do all this training, then you better get a result out of it. And the only way you're going to get a result, and we all know this, is if your nutrition's in the right place. If your rest and recovery is there. Are you actually training properly? And it's a case of, don't half-art it. Just don't do the half 50% of the effort. Go all in. So the first thing we have to do is remove this false belief that for some reason is in everyone's head that tracking calories or weighing your foods out or having a scale is unhealthy or unsustainable. People, for some reason, just think if you use MyFitnessPal, you've got some sort of eating disorder and you're unhealthy. No, it just means you're very careful about what you put in your body because you have a goal and you want to make sure that you're consuming the right amount of calories and macronutrients for your goals. It's pretty logical. Do you know what I mean? Like, you need to remove this from your head, because at the end of the day, if you just don't do it because of whatever reason, you think it's time consuming, you think it's unsustainable, you think it's unhealthy, you're not going to get to your goal. Why? Because you're shooting from the hip. You're just guessing. And it's like, we know guesswork doesn't get you places. It's like, if you want to get to a destination, right? So you're in London and you want to get to Manchester. You put it in the sat nav and you find the best route. You can drive around and potentially get there, but it'll probably take you way longer. If you want to get there quickly, you just put it in the fucking sat nav. And it's the exact same thing. It's just like, you need to know exactly what you're putting in your body. So what I'd recommend is, if you don't have one already, first thing you can take from this video is go on Amazon and buy a food scale. If you don't have one, I guarantee you your progress will not be as good. The person who has a food scale is already winning. It's like, next you have a weighing scale. Do you weigh yourself consistently? And those are the 2 questions you've got to ask yourself. So what I would say is just do everything by the book. Understand exactly how many calories and macronutrients you need to make progress. And the way you can do this is very simple, just using a TDEE calculator. Figure out what it is you want to do. Is it a case of we want to go into a deficit? Do we want to go into a gaining phase? Find out what your maintenance calories are and start there. And then weigh yourself on a consistent basis and make sure that everything's working. Are we losing weight, for example? We want to go into a deficit. Are we losing weight? Okay, happy days. And then it's just your job now to make sure that you're not estimating the calories. For example, when you put in 100 gram of oats, or that's on your meal plan, you don't just go, oh, well, the bowl is 100 gram, so let's just have a bowl. No, you weigh it out. And it's just like when there's a chicken packet, right, and there's a kilo, you don't just go, oh, well, there's 4 chicken breasts, one of them must be 250 grams, so let's just do that. No, you're just being lazy. Weigh your food out. And I wish someone told me that, because I was lazy as well. I cut corners, and I'm telling you, if you cut corners, it will show within your physique. You will not be where you want to be. So just, if you're doing all the hard stuff, so just go into the gym, go all the way. And here's exactly what I would do. Honestly, if someone could just tell me this, I'd be so happy. And it's just a case of, number 1, weigh out all my foods using a scale, hit my calories and macros accurately. So no guessing. So if I need to eat 2,300 calories and I'm going to have 5 meals per day, I'm going to make sure that in advance I either have a meal plan ready, or I've basically tracked my calories in advance for the day. So when I wake up in the morning and I grab my coffee and I have my first meal, I'm going to go, okay, what are we going to eat for the rest of the day? And then what I do is I put in all the measurements according to what I have in the fridge, and I hit my calories on paper, and I hit the macros on paper as well. So I hit the 2,300 calories, hit my 200 gram of protein, 300 gram of carb or whatever. Cool. Now when I go to have those meals, I don't estimate. I weigh everything. So I get my scale out, I put the bowl, I take the chicken out. Okay, we've got 180 grams of chicken, weigh up 180 grams. I do that. And I make sure everything's by the book. I make sure when I cook my food, I'm not adding excess calories through olive oil. I'm using fry light. I know when I'm using my sauces, I'm using kind of lighter sauces such as sriracha. I'm not taking a piss with some stupid barbecue or peronaise and going ham on it. That would just add a load of calories. And I'm just trying to kind of reiterate this importance of just how accurate you kind of want to be. It's just the most important thing to do. And it's easy. It really is easy. You just need to go the extra mile. Next, what I would do to just remove decision fatigue is to create a meal plan. You'll often find that you're just eating the same thing most days. So what you can do on MyFitnessPal is just save your most common meals. Typically it'll be your protein oats or whatever you have in the morning, and then your lunch and your snack. What I like to do is have a meal plan for my training day and my non-training day. This is what I do for all of my clients, and that way there's no decision fatigue. It's just so easy. They just know what they're eating in advance. They've actually ordered the quantities because we've created them a shopping list, and that way it's so easy. So just do the same thing, and you can do that through Excel, or you can do that on MyFitnessPal. But just again, remove decision fatigue. Just spend 1 hour or so doing it once, and then you will never have to track your calories consistently. Like, I don't track my calories. Do you know what I mean? I just eat what's on my meal plan. Very simple. Then that's what I would do in terms of nutrition. Next, I would track my lifts using an app. You know, the amount of people who say they're serious but then track their weights on notes or track it in their head, you're just missing a trick. Just use an app. There's so many out there. There's one called Strong Plus that I really like. It was good back in the day when I first started. And what I just do is I put my program into there, and when I go and train, I basically see every single week what I lifted last week, and I know, okay, well, if I'm going to get stronger, I need to add a few more reps here, or a bit of weight, or so on, you know, whatever it needs to be. And that way, strength is always going to be trending upwards. I'm going to be getting stronger. But if I was not tracking that, or I was not tracking it accurately because I was using notes, and notes hasn't got the best like interface for me to actually input things, I probably wouldn't get to my goals quick. So I would be doing everything by the book there. I would also be tracking my weight daily and fasted. I wouldn't just be very laissez-faire, just jumping on the scale whenever I fancied it. I'd make it a habit to literally put in my weight every single day. If I'm in a deficit and that weight is not going down after 4 or 5 days, and I'm doing it fasted, because remember, if you don't do it fasted, then there's food in your stomach from the night before, food in the morning or whatever, it's not accurate. The only way that you're going to get your accurate weight is when you wake up in the morning, you have no food. What I typically do is have a coffee, water, go to the toilet, and as soon as I've done that, then I weigh myself, and that's the most accurate I would be. If I'm in a deficit and my weight is trending downwards, happy days. If it's going too quick, then I probably might ease off the gas a little bit because I might be losing muscle. But if it's not moving at all, then I'm going to think, okay, well, we need to probably drop the calories ever so slightly, and we do that. But if you're doing this on a weekly basis and you're only doing it once per week as opposed to daily, you have less data and information to go off, because when you check in and you do your weight reading on, let's say, a Sunday, who's to say you weren't less the day before? There's fluctuations that you need to account for, and that's why tracking your weight daily on notes is the best thing. And you can make so much progress every single day if you actually do this. So that's what I would say there. Also, weekly progress pictures. If you want to see what's happening with your physique, you need to be taking pictures in the same lighting, in the same place every single week, and ask yourself, right, are we getting leaner? Are we getting more muscular, depending on what our goal is? And that's kind of what I would say. And finally, depending on who you are, potentially get a coach for accountability. Like, I have a coach myself, and it just gives me a second pair of eyes on everything I'm wanting to do. If you are genuinely wanting to take it seriously, it is 100% the best investment you can make, in my opinion. I'm not just saying that because I'm a coach myself. Like, maybe I'm a little bit biased. It genuinely is the way to get better results, just because you're not doing everything on your own. You've got that second pair of eyes. So I will, subtly plug my coach in here. If you do want that second pair of eyes, you know it's come to. But I would highly recommend getting a coach. It really does make a big difference. And that's just the main thing I would talk about. Do everything by the book. Don't be the guy who just puts in all this effort, for a year or two, going to the gym and doing all the hard work, but then just falls short of, the first hurdle, just literally stops doing the one thing that's actually going to get them results. It's like people say tracking calories and doing all this stuff is time consuming. In my opinion, what's time consuming is going to the gym over and over again for years and not seeing results, all because you just couldn't allow for 5 minutes in your day to track your calories. Just think about that. If you can take one thing, just remember that thing. And that's what I'd say there. Just a degree of accuracy when it comes to everything will change your life. Now, next I want to talk about being a little bit more accurate is having separate training day and non-training day calories. So this is something I never used to do, but I'll explain this really, really simply. On the days that you train, you're going to burn more calories. Why? Because you're lifting other weights, you're potentially doing some cardio after your session, you're going to be lifting more weights, therefore you're going to need more calories. On the rest day, you're not going to the gym, so you're burning less calories, so you don't need the same amount of calories on the training day and the non-training day. Now, why is that important? Well, our goal with the calories and the foods we're consuming are for them to be used. If we know we're going to be burning less, then we need the same amount of protein, we need the same amount of fats ideally, but we need less carbs. The reason carbs are there is just to provide us with glycogen, so we can essentially fuel for performance and lift more weight. But if we're not lifting any weight on the rest days, then we can just drop carbs down and reduce the calories by 200 to 300. For example, this is my training day at the moment. I have 2.4k calories, and on my non-training day, I reduce 300 calories to 2,182. I do that through 100 gram of carbs. That's pretty much what's going on here. And then fats will go up ever so slightly, obviously to make up for that. And what this will do in a surplus, for one, is make sure that you're not gaining excess body fat, because you're using all of the macronutrients, you're using all of the calories, the food you're eating. And also in a deficit, you're not going to be overeating. You're going to be able to actually push quicker. So you're going to lose body fat quicker in a deficit, and you're going to gain less fat in a surplus with the same amount of muscle. Therefore, you don't have to kind of go into a dieting phase. And I'm telling you, this really does make a difference, because if you think about this and you're training 5 days per week and you have 2 rest days and you drop your calories by 300 on those 2 rest days, you've now dropped your calories for the week by 600. And then you do that on a daily average and you will see the difference. So very, very small thing. It seems small, but 2 days out of your week, especially if you're training only 4 days per week or 3 days, makes a massive difference. So look into that, have separate days for calories in terms of training and non-training days. Makes a big difference. That's what I wish I knew as well. Now, number 3 is meal timing and meal quantity. Now, I'm going to tell you this because I only learned this recently. When I was in my deficit, when I was in Thailand, I literally had 2 meals per day. And there's just so many things that's wrong with this. One, in terms of actual digestion, the amount of stress you put in your body under, because if you're trying to hit your 200 grams of protein, you're trying to absorb 100 grams of protein in one meal, and 100 grams of protein in another meal. And it's just, a lot of it can just go to waste, essentially. It can be absorbed, it takes a long time, but you're just putting your body under a lot of stress, and there's evidence to suggest that a lot of it can just kind of go to waste and doesn't get absorbed properly. So for that reason, you do want to be spacing your meals around 4 to 6 so you can have protein evenly throughout the day. That will result in better protein absorption. Not to mention your hunger levels. And I'm telling you, this works in a gaining phase and a deficit phase, and I'll explain this now. If I was to go the whole day and then just have one meal, the chances are that I will become hungry later are pretty high. When I'm eating every 2 to 3 hours, I can control my hunger. Why? Because I can just quickly have a meal, and then if I've done it in the right way, such as intermittent fasting, which I'll talk about here, if I have my first meal at 10, I can have 4 to 6 meals, which means I can have my first meal at 10, then my next one at 1, my next one at 4, and my next one at 7, and my next one at 9. I get 5 meals all the way up until bed. And that means I'm never at a point where I'm craving, because I've already got another meal coming. Not to mention better digestion. This works in a bulking phase as well. When you need to be eating 3,000 to 4,000 calories to obviously put yourself in a surplus and gaining weight, if you're doing that across 3 meals throughout the day, you're having to eat 1,000 calories per meal, at least. And that's quite a lot. It's quite a lot, and it becomes pretty difficult to eat those calories. It almost feels like a burden. Not to mention what the stress it does on your digestive system. You're going to have to be eating a lot of carbs as well, so you're going to feel pretty shit and tired. That's why people don't like carbs, because they just eat so much of them. But if you were to have that across 5 to 6 meals and you were to eat 4,000 calories, well, if we did 4,000 divided by 6, it's around 700 calories, maybe a bit less per meal, and that's much more manageable. And not to mention, obviously, the protein absorption, better control with respect to hunger. You're not going to be just kind of full all the time and feeling lethargic. You're going to feel better, and you're going to have better digestion. Because remember, if you're eating 4,000 calories and you're doing that across 3 meals or 2 meals, to have a 1,500, 2,000 calorie meal, it's going to put a lot of stress on your body. So that's something that's really, really important to understand. When I was bulking, I would just have these stupidly big meals that would just knock me out after, and then in the deficit, I would just try and get all my protein in one meal. It's a bit silly, so I wouldn't do that. And another key little tip that I've started to introduce is just making sure that we're not just supplementing greens, but we're actually having vegetables with every meal. Make it a habit to have every single meal with some form of vegetables. What I like to do now is just get frozen vegetables. You can get a kilo for pretty much next to nothing, and you just weigh out 100 grams, and then you just literally put that with your meal. And then that's not only going to help with hunger, because vegetables have 0 calories pretty much. I mean, they have like 40, 50, right? But when you're having out of every meal, it's just adding more quantity to the actual meal. So when you're in a deficit, it's going to help with your hunger and it's going to prevent you from craving. Not to mention what happens with your skin, your hair, your nails, antioxidants, vitamins. It's just so important. Just having that clarity, knowing that you're eating better, is always going to be amazing. So always think in the back of your mind, are you actually eating your veg? It's really going to help with health and hunger control, and you should always be doing it. So make sure you're doing that in terms of your meal timing, meal quantity, and how to actually structure your meals. Now, number 4, tempo and training intensity. So this is really a big one. Now, this is actually a really good example. If you have a look at this picture here, this is me doing weighted dips at the moment, and you can just see, obviously there's not a video, you can see kind of where my elbow is and how far I'm coming down here. Now, I don't think anyone's seen this video, but I'm not rushing here. I'm taking this really, really slow. And if I could go back and just tell myself something, and this is really difficult when you're first starting out, but I would review my form weekly and just honestly focus on sticking to the slowest tempo possible and time under tension. If you want to make the best amount of progress, my best advice is just to slow down every movement as much as possible. Like, actively try to slow it down and fuck the weight. It means leaving the ego at the door. And really, you want to be having a 5 to 6 second rep for every single exercise, really. And if that means you need to drop the weight, then so be it, because that's the way you're going to make the best amount of progress. We're not just trying to shift the weight from A to B, we're trying to focus on how the weight actually goes from A to B. And it may mean less weight, but ultimately, if you came into the gym and you wanted more growth, then you should be focusing on that. Fuck the weight. The weight can come later. But ultimately, if you want more growth, you need to have your tempo and your training intensity locked in. And the problem is, if you don't lock this in early, you're just going to keep climbing the ladder and you're going to keep progressing, but you've left gains on the table because you didn't have the foundations in place. And often what this causes is plateaus, because we're not actually, we're increasing weight, but we're not actually increasing actual muscle mass or strength. Why? Because we're not lifting the weight properly. And 2, it's going to result in an injury. Do you know how many times I see this? Shoulder press, on dumbbell shoulder press. Nearly everyone does their rotator cuff. Why? Because they haven't actually mastered the movement and done it slow enough to realise that you can actually make a lot of progress with just the lighter weights. And then when you slowly start to have that locked in and that foundation, then you can start to progress. And I guarantee that's where you're going to see the majority of your results. You'll create a better foundation for progress as opposed to just rushing through movements. So my best advice, build that foundation early. Get someone to film your sets. Set up a water bottle, just film one of your sets and just watch it and just say, do I look like I'm actually controlling that weight? And this is where you just have to have an open mind and just be objective and just go, no, I'm probably not. So should we just drop the weight? And who cares if your mate's lifting more than you or whatever? It doesn't matter. It matters how big you are at the end of the day, because that's probably why you're in a gym. You're wanting to see results in your physique. So if you're trying to see that, fuck the weight. The weight will come back. I really don't care how much weight I lift. I just care that, as long as I look the part, I'm happy. As long as my progress is where it needs to be, happy days. So my best advice is really, really focus on this and you will stimulate more growth. Just trust me on that one. And finally, last thing I want to talk about is cardio. Now, when I was in a gaining phase, when I was bulking when I first started, I never did cardio. Why? Because I just thought it was counterintuitive. But if we look from an actual health standpoint, your cardiovascular function and your heart health is going to be in the bin if you're not doing cardio. And it's just not good. No one wants to be that. I speak to a lot of people who come into the program and come into coaching, and they tell me they just want to improve their fitness as well as their actual physique and body composition. So we have to realise, whilst chasing, a good physique, we can't lose sight of the overall goal, which was to improve our fitness. And that's why I will always say, no matter what you're doing, you should always be doing at least 2 to 3 sessions of cardio per week, even in a gaining phase. If you're in a surplus, think of it as an opportunity to eat the calories back, or mitigate any overeating that comes from perhaps going out on the weekend. It's actually much better in a surplus, because what you can do is, if you go out with your friends or whatever, and you overeat because you've had a meal out, you can use your cardio as just a way to just bring you back to your baseline whilst improving your cardiovascular function. However, when you're in a dieting phase, cardio is almost a must. You need to be doing 5 to 6 days of cardio. Personally, I put my clients on 6 days, 25 minutes to begin with, and then slowly increase that. And in the gaining phase, you want 2 or 3 sessions ideally. You'll notice that you're going to get insanely fit whilst in a dieting phase. Why? Because you're doing more cardio, you're burning more calories. Like right now, my HRV is in triple digits, I'm feeling good. And you'll get to your desired physique much quicker, and you're obviously going to get leaner in a deficit. So making sure that you're doing this is so important, and actually prioritising this. I'm sure a lot of people won't make this mistake, but it's a mistake I made when I was younger, and it was when I was actually in a dieting phase. For some reason, I would eat my calories back from cardio. Only do that when you're in a gaining phase. When you're in a deficit, you're actually trying to use the cardio to further the deficit without decreasing your food. and it's such an important tool, not only for your cardiovascular function, not only for your heart health, but it needs to be done when you're in a deficit to lose more weight and enlarge that deficit. Because if you just skip the cardio and you decrease the food, you're not going to have enough fuel for actual muscle growth. You're not going to feel good, so you need to be doing it. Not to mention how amazing you feel after cardio. You genuinely feel really, really good. So make sure you're doing that. I'm not saying, go on these crazy runs. I'm just talking a bit of zone 2 work, like on the incline walking, the Stairmaster, the bike. You're always going to feel better for it, and I would highly recommend doing that even in a bulking phase. You're just going to feel so much better. You'll actually enjoy your life a lot more, and you'll be getting fitter, which is really, really important. So just stop skipping cardio. Those are the 5 tips that I came up with this morning that would really, really help me if I could look back. They're probably a little bit boring and, not what you want to hear, but that's kind of the most important thing that sometimes you do need to hear. No one will tell you this stuff. This is kind of what I wish I knew when I first started. So I hope that was useful. I'm going to do a few of these videos because I feel like they're very useful, and there's more things that I wish I knew. So if you did like it, please do let me know if you want to see any more. If you have any feedback, just drop it in the comments. If that was useful, drop a like, subscribe. But other than that, boys, I hope that video was useful. If you are someone who is really struggling and just completely confused, feel free to reach out, link in the bio. We can book in a call and discuss your physique goals. But other than that, boys, that's today's video. We'll be back tomorrow. So yeah, all the best. Catch you next time.